Y'all, so it is midsummer and there is so much happening. I signed up the little one for camp. And can we first talk about the prices of camp? Like, as we are living in a world right now where there's so much going on, and I'll get into that later about like how it's had me in my feels and how I think we can navigate our way out of it. But I mean, her camp, no joke, is $220 a day. A day. And I say this because she is supported by me and her stepdad, right? We are the only people contributing to her life, her well being, her care, all of the things. And in this economy right now, knowing that you are, no, we're not single parents. You know what I mean? I'm like, because I'm married now, but I am a single parent. You know what I mean? In terms of caring for her. And when I tell you, it is such a reality check to realize the dollar doesn't feel like it goes as far as it used to. And some things just aren't optional, right? We all both work full-time jobs. He's a musician. He's a producer. He, is constantly in the studio working on music for commercials and clients. And then of course, I have my clients as well, running my consulting firm, Inherit, which, just throwing it out there for anyone, I have seen such an influx of clients because of the economic times we're in. Everyone is trying to prepare for the worst, even though we hope for the best. Or let me be transparent. Everyone's preparing for the worst and expecting the worst. And I do want to talk about that a little bit because, I'm coming off of incredible 45 days. I was Emmy nominated, which I talked about last episode with Alex, and that was just a doozy. We went to the Emmys and it was an incredible experience. We didn't win, but that was huge. And then soon thereafter, we planned some big family events and we had everyone in town, and I'll talk more about that later, but it was just, huge milestone moments. And then I took a great trip, and got in some beach time, but for the first time took off an entire month with radio silence, meaning no work, no launches, no kid stuff, nothing. And that was just beyond, and just coming back into it all, it almost felt like I turned off my brain from the internet and politics and business and all these things. And I felt like I came back to a hot mess express. Like, what did y'all do while I was gone? Why didn't these kids behave? And I did things like I watched the debate. Now, I don't know how y'all are feeling about politics. You know that we don't get into too much of the nitty gritty here because I like to have grace and empathy and tolerance for everyone. But y'all, I can't shake the fact that I'm like, are these really my options? Are these really my options? And while I don't want to equivocate, someone being elderly against someone having, criminal convictions, and say one is better or worse than the other, I will say that if I were to make a wish list of presidential qualities, I feel like we're lacking a lot. Capabilities, there's definitely capabilities here, but, qualities, this ain't it. If character is a thing that I have to vote for, I know which way I would go, but it's a tough situation right now. And it does not feel good. Like, it just doesn't feel good. And it's hard to look around, especially during the summertime, where I almost feel like I'm interacting with my bank account more because it's not the routine of work and school. It's what's the activity? And, kids don't eat with their school stomachs. They eat with their summer stomachs. Summer stomachs are, I need a snack every 15 seconds. I'm having a hot breakfast every morning. Like, this place is IHOP, and for lunch, oh, this is the perfect time to eat lasagna versus a sandwich. I mean, it is, I could literally take out stock at Costco. And it just gets really tough because I think that we've talked about it. Me and Alex had a whole episode about prepping for baby, and it's all about the future being optimistic. We're doing fine right now. I think a lot of us recognize that it's tight, it's tough. We worry about ends meet, but we are making it work for the sake of our children. We are making ourselves show up. But it's the future that has us a little angsty. So, I'll raise my hand and say I came back from my break thinking I'd be rested and ready to take on the world. And I had a couple of like full on anxious moments where I was just kind of like, what is happening here? Like, is it fair for me to plan and say, we'll move into like a bigger home, if we decide to expand our family? Is it fair for me to plan to say that I'll get a nanny who will help support me and help me? Is it fair for me to say that with, this volume of clients that are coming in, trying to figure out how to navigate things, that I should expand my team or I should get a bigger office space? And, it just feels really hard to plan for the future when there's so much going on that feels out of our control. And I know right now so many of you are like nodding your heads like, girl, you know? And in therapy, they tell you, worry about what's in your control. And, the concept of control is kind of a diluted one, right? Like we're never actually in control. We don't actually like anything can happen. And all that is true. But I feel like growing up, in the 90s and early 2000s, there was some loose expectation that if I put something down, it was still going to be there for a while. If I did a little bit of work, it won't get undone. It didn't feel like everything was unprecedented times. It didn't feel like the world was going to, flip over and be something wildly different than I expected in just a month's time. I mean, I remember during pandemic times, from like, let's say like 2016 to like, I don't know, 2020 or so, it almost felt like the news gave me anxiety. Like I would go to sleep and wonder what happened politically the next day, or who's upset with us about whatever as a country, or what's this new law, or, during the pandemic, are we going outside again? Like, did it get worse? What's the death count? I mean, there were literally tickers about death counts. And I have to wonder if the me and maybe the you that's meeting this season, almost protecting ourselves by not having too much hope and maybe harming ourselves by having a little more anxiety and protecting our nervous system, has become trained that way based on some of the things we've had to survive from the previous seasons. Are we bringing our survival instincts and letting them change who we are fundamentally? Are we going from being the type of people that used to act and live as if hope for a better tomorrow was warranted behavior, it made sense, to being people who are saying to ourselves, it makes sense for us to be hopeless or minimize our expectations, because what if the rug is pulled out from underneath us? Are we waiting for the other shoe to drop? Is it safe to exhale? And it's with that I've really been doing some serious exploration. I would say that for the past maybe 2 weeks or so, I've been in a funk, y'all, like really just tapping, because it's mental, right? Like tapping all my tools. We're talking the pasta, the therapist, my friends, my husband, like all the things, just really trying to figure out, is it worth moving forward? Like, what's the point? It feels like I've never seen anything like this. Is it true that we really don't like each other? All right, truth moment, y'all. Do you cringe a little bit, or do you find yourself kind of having a moment whenever someone brings up something that sounds slightly political? Like there are trigger words, like I'll say them now and you tell me abortion. Do you not find yourself feeling a little like, like, is that okay to say? How are people going to react? Trump, like you feel an emotional response, and it's tough because it's like, since when has it been like this? And I don't know if this is like, a woman of a certain age bracket thing, maybe that's what it is because I'm in that 40 club, or is it like this for everyone? I mean, the kids honestly seem so jaded. I look at my kids in the 20s, I've got a 22-year-old and a 24-year-old, and bless my 22-year-old's heart, because of her cancer journey that she had to go through and, her infusion rounds, she missed all of 11th grade. Then she was in for all of the pandemic. So she had no prom, no graduation. Then she went to college, but college was like, kind of iffy at that time. Ended up finishing out college and is now entering a world in, a really tough economy, and I mean, for essentially from age, I don't know, 15 until what's looking like 25 almost, she's got this life where she's like, I am just kind of waiting for I'm just doing the bare minimum, she's even said to me at one point, I don't know why we get like a job because I don't know if I'll keep it. I don't know if that's even what I want to do, which, to be fair, the what I want to do part is very age appropriate, right? You should be getting a job, staying there for 2 years, figuring out if it's what you want to do, move to the next thing, and feeling some relative stability. But she's like, why would I stress myself out working? Because it's not like I'll be able to get a house, Why would I, get a job that's just going to stress me out, if that's not even what I want to do? Or even if I did find a job I love, I might just end up losing it because they lay people off. Why even bother trying to get a regular 9 to 5 with a typical salary structure when it's not going to be enough to do any of the things I actually want to do, like buy a home or travel enough or eat fine dining? Like she just is like, it's really hard to see what the point of it all is. All that matters is I make the bare minimum so that I can keep my peace. And it just kind of brings me to the place where I wonder, what does it look like for us to now be in a place where we are just saying the bare minimum is that we just want to keep our personal peace? We're not worried about our neighbors. We're not worried about the future. I get really scared that we're starting to feel hopeless. And it can be really disheartening. It can be really disheartening because more and more, I think it can feel like everywhere we look, there's a lot of negativity. There's a lot of a lack of unity. Transparently, we're coming up on a political, cycle that seems just laden with divisiveness. And when I say the divisiveness, I mean not just from a political standpoint, but it seems like every single conversation with anything that hints at something political feels inflammatory. It feels like we don't have a tone moderation. We don't know how to speak about things in a informed, policy based way. It really is starting to feel like um, it's personal. Like if I am not interested in what you believe, it's personally offensive. If I don't want for your family or your children the way that I want, that I believe I should have for mine, it's personal. And on some levels, when it comes to things like, racism, poverty, ageism, fertility, those things are pretty personal, and we should be thinking of our neighbors as we make our choices. But it doesn't change the fact that whatever other people believe doesn't have to change or affect what you believe and do within your own home. And it really doesn't change the fact that these sorts of things that are happening in our lives every single day can't be something that we carry all the time, because it is just downright bad for our nervous system. And that's what I want to talk about today. So I don't know about y'all, but I am battling hopelessness. And I say that as someone who is in the business of hope. I like to joke that I am a hope dealer, right? And I'm always looking on the bright side. I'm always talking about optimism. I'm always looking for, you know, a way out that is driven by hard work, by belief, by my faith, because you guys know I'm a God girl, but also by action. What can I do to make it better out there for others? And more, it feels like the efforts aren't going to make much of a difference. And I've had to really spend some dedicated time working a little harder to have a lot more hope. And I wanted to share with you some thoughts that I've had recently, and some things I've landed upon that have really helped me look at this season in a whole new light and realize that no matter what the outcomes may be, whether it's in a political race or in your personal ability to have enough money to buy that house you want, or when you go to the grocery store and you realize everything, totals up to an extra $50 and you got to take some things off the list, just what does it look like to have a little bit more hope? And my answer to that is that this is not the first time, and don't let anyone convince you that we don't love each other or that it is so bad that it won't get better. And I know that that sounds kind of wildly optimistic. It sounds like internet mumbo jumbo, but here's why I want to tell you this. I started looking into the history and, looking back and saying, gosh, like, this can't be the first time we're in dire times. And as somebody who works with people in my consulting business on their finances and, as a total political science nerd, and that was my major in college, a lot of understanding what's happening now involves looking back. And we have to realize that what we're in is not brand new. It's not. It may feel a little different, and that's because of technology, and that is because of things like social media, and that's because of, I think we're seeing things in a more visible way that amplifies, the fire of the moment. But I want to be clear. There have been times that have been a lot worse than this in American history. And I just go back to as recently as World War II. And, I say recently, but, it was a long time ago, but when you think about World War II, this was coming off the back of World War I. There wasn't much time in between. The country had already gone through, financial depressions. They've gone through rationing of foods and goods and supplies. They've gone through experiencing major losses, of their youth. They've gone through a reckoning of what their value systems are, only to, without much recovery time, have to navigate a second war that, many would say was worse than the first, particularly for those who are of Jewish origin, that suffered greatly in a way that should never be forgotten and should continue to drive our decision makings as we battle authoritarian regimes, here and abroad. And when we look at World War II, the thing I always try to remind myself is not how we navigated out of it, but, keeping in mind the lessons we learned during it. But this was a wartime situation. And moms back then believed just like moms like us. They wanted to know that their kids would be safe. They listened every day for news of, bombings abroad. They wondered if, young men were going to return home. They supported their friends as they experienced losses. They sent their kids to school, to practice drills and worry about sirens. And then they heard about newfangled things like nuclear weapons, that felt like it really ratcheted up the fear. And then they saw them used. And so I just want to give you some context, as we feel like we're in unprecedented times, and we are in terms of some of the things that are occurring. They're new, because technology is new. But it was unprecedented for someone to come up with a weapon that was so massive it could destroy an entire city in one go of it. Living in a world like that, when prior to that did not exist, where the worst that could happen were a couple of missiles or maybe some bullets, which did a lot of damage, but not to that scale. And this was something that was only mumbled about, and only to see it used in two different cities to eventually bring about the end of the war, but not without sad, needless casualties. It's pretty hard to imagine that those mothers were able to dig deep and find a lot of hope about the future. And yet, those mothers, while looking at fridges that are bare, while going to grocery stores and realizing that certain items weren't on the shelves, while comforting their friends over coffee and tea because their sons were never coming home, while voting in an election, hoping that the new president will make it different for their personal experience, while wondering if these weapons are actually being protected and holstered, or if this is just the new version of fighting that we need to come to terms with. And there's going to be a World War III very soon because it was just another one. These mothers still went to work. They still had babies. They still loved and put their kids to school every day and taught them values about the importance of being kind, about being empathetic, about loving their neighbor. They still went to church. They still, built their communities out. They still had dreams. And for many of us, if you are an American and you grew up here and you had family that either fought in that war, has been here for a while, you may have heard stories from these grandparents who experienced that. Not too many of them are still around, God rest their souls, but, they made it. They made it through some pivotal changes and some massive world changing on a global level differences that they never could have fathomed. And they still managed to find their hope. And where did they get it? From acting in belief. If there's anything that each of us can do right now, it's not acting as if things are hopeless, but acting as if we believe there's a possibility for change, a possibility for better, a possibility to leave this place better than we found it when we go. And if there's anything that I think would be powerful to inspire both our children as we, create new ones and raise the ones we've got and support as teachers and mentors and educators, the ones that come our way, it's to transfer that belief and that hope to them and let them know that voting matters. It matters to participate in our electoral process. Showing up is relevant. Being registered is relevant. Chasing a career path that matters to you is relevant. Taking the adventure of entrepreneurship matters. Exploring your creative side is important. Finding a relationship that is feeding your soul and fulfilling is worth your time, because all of these things are going to contribute to a better tomorrow, because tomorrow is going to arrive. And if we all continue to act in belief and show up every day and not give in to the hopelessness that we're constantly fed is required in order to navigate this time, tomorrow's going to be better than we ever could have believed. So friend, I want to let you know I'm not immune from it either. And as optimistic as I tend to be, and as much as I am, taking on things day by day, I have my moments. I watch debates and I say, wow, is this for real? Is this really happening right now? I look at mortgage rates and I say, holy cow, what is this going to be in the future? I still have those reaction times. I still have those moments where I wonder if my 12-year-old is going to inherit anything that's kind of worth having or established, but she's here. And so that means that there is worth behind my work. And everything you do is worthy too. So I'm doing it. I'm showing up and I'm believing for a better tomorrow. And friend, despite it all, I hope you do the same.